"Back away, Lucas. She'll bite," the butler's voice warned. The words stopped Lucas Hale in his tracks, but his eyes remained glued to the epicenter of the chaos. In the middle of the living room, a little blonde girl was curled up on the floor, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, rocking back and forth without stopping. Her face was nearly a blank slate, save for her eyes, which darted around in a panic, like a bird trapped in a cage. Nearby, a woman whispered urgently into her phone, "She's having another episode. Where is her nanny? Could I maybe try something?" Lucas offered tentatively. The butler immediately raised a hand to stop him, his voice dropping to a low, cautionary tone. "That's the ward girl," he said. "Don't get involved. The last guy who tried was fired on the spot." But Lucas didn't seem to hear. He quietly turned, slipped out into the garden, and returned almost instantly with a handful of freshly picked flowers. Without a word of explanation, he sat down a short distance from the girl and began to gently pull the petals from the flowers, one by one, letting them drift to the floor. 1, 2, 3 petals. The girl's rocking slowed, then stopped completely. Her eyes, frantic just moments before, were now fixated on the dance of the softly falling petals. Lucas never looked directly at her, never spoke. He simply, patiently, continued his work. From the mezzanine above, Mylene Ward, CEO of Wardcore Biotech, stood with her arms crossed, radiating an unmistakable air of authority. Her cold, calculating eyes were fixed on the scene below, as if assessing every single move. She took the elevator down. As the doors slid open, she stepped into the lobby, her voice sharp and clipped. "Mr. Hale." Lucas slowly rose to his feet. "Ma'am, my office, now." His gaze flickered to Eva, who was now perfectly calm, captivated by a petal in her hand. "I don't think that's—" "I wasn't asking." Mylene cut him off. She turned to a security guard, ordering, "Get Dr. Sharma on the line. Tell him to come check on Eva immediately." Inside the office, the air was thick with the scent of metal and expensive silence. "Close the door," her voice commanded. Lucas gently shut it. A long pause stretched between them. Mylene just stood there, staring at him as if trying to analyze a complex machine. "Who taught you to do that?" she finally asked. "With the petals." Lucas met her gaze, his own composure absolute. "My daughter," he said, his voice steady. "She had a sensory processing disorder, just like Eva." Mylene leaned forward slightly, her attention now fully captured. "Back then," Lucas continued, a slight tremor entering his voice, "I thought she just needed time. I thought I understood her, that everything would be fine. I was complacent." He paused, swallowing hard. His gaze was no longer on Mylene, but lost in a space filled with regret. Then one day, she ran away. The police found her. But it was too late. She didn't make it. The silence in the room was now almost unbearable. Lucas's raw confession hung in the air between them. "Ever since that day," he said, his voice hoarse, "I've spent my life learning all over again. Learning how to truly listen, how to see what children like my daughter are trying to show you, instead of just assuming I knew best." Mylene leaned back in her chair, the tough facade seeming to crack. Her voice broke, just slightly. "My daughter doesn't communicate, not with doctors, not with specialists, not with me. And yet you scatter a few flower petals, and she's calm." The desperation in her voice was almost tangible. "I want you to work with Eva," Mylene said, her tone firm and decisive. Lucas blinked, as if being pulled back to reality. "Mrs. Ward, I'm just the gardener. I don't care who you are. I'll pay you." "This isn't a job," Lucas replied, his voice regaining its composure. "And what Eva needs isn't another paid specialist. She has the best care money can buy." Mylene snapped, a knee-jerk defense. "Perhaps that's the problem," Lucas said gently. Silence fell again, but this time it was different. It was the silence of a shared understanding, of a wall beginning to crumble. "If I agree," Lucas said finally, "I have one condition." Mylene raised an eyebrow. I work with Eva, not for you, and when I'm with her, there will be no observers, no cameras, no specialists hovering nearby, just her and me. Malene watched him for a long moment, the calculation in her eyes giving way to something else, hope. She gave a slow, deliberate nod. Agreed. As Lucas opened the door to leave, Malene called out, "Mr. Hale?" He paused, turning back. "The petals. Why them? Color," he said. "Always start with the softest ones. They quiet the chaos from within." The door closed with a soft click, but the echo of his words lingered like a whisper in a church that hadn't heard a prayer in years. The following days unfolded in a near meditative silence. Every afternoon, at 3 o'clock sharp, Lucas would give a soft knock on the living room door and let himself in. He never offered a hello or tried to get her attention. He would simply find a spot on the floor, a good distance from where Eva sat lost in her own world, and begin his work. His work was deceptively simple. He would lay a large sheet of white paper on the floor. Piece by piece, he'd pick up the dried petals from his first visit, carefully dust them off, and use a small glue stick to affix them to the paper. He worked slowly, with intense focus, as if he were arranging a masterpiece. Eva, as usual, showed no reaction. She remained in her corner, curled up, occasionally rocking gently. Her eyes were fixed on an indeterminate point in space. To any observer, Lucas's presence seemed completely invisible to her. He was part of the furniture, nothing more. But Lucas remained patient. He didn't push, didn't ask questions, didn't seek out a single glance. He was just there, day after day, as the white paper was gradually filled with petals of every color, forming an impromptu mosaic. Malene Ward watched it all on a security camera she'd had secretly reinstalled, in defiance of their agreement. She was a CEO, a woman accustomed to results, to measurable data, and what she saw on the screen was wearing her patience thin. On the first day, she saw novelty. On the second, a flicker of hope. But by the fourth day, all she saw was a man sitting on her floor gluing dried flowers to a piece of paper, and a daughter who remained as silent as a statue. "It's not working," she muttered to herself in her office, her fingers tapping a restless rhythm on the polished wood of her desk. 4 days of gluing useless petals, not one word, not one gesture, nothing. At the end of the 5th day, just as Lucas was carefully placing the last petal on the paper mosaic, Malene entered the room. The sharp click of her heels shattered the tranquility he had spent days cultivating. "Mr. Hale," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion. "That's enough." Lucas looked up, his expression serene. He wasn't surprised. He had seen this kind of impatience in so many others before. "I think we should stop here," Malene continued, avoiding eye contact with the floral artwork on the floor. "I appreciate your efforts, but it's clearly not working. Please return to your gardening duties. You'll be compensated in full for your time." She spoke as if she were terminating a failed business contract. Lucas slowly got to his feet, dusting off his knees. He looked at Malene, then his gaze drifted to Eva, still motionless in her corner. He didn't argue, didn't explain. He simply gave a gentle nod. "I understand," he said. "Thank you." There was no reproach in his voice, only a profound sadness and a genuine sympathy for the mother standing before him. He knew she was in pain, and that her pain was blinding her. He bent down, picked up the flower-covered paper, folded it carefully, and placed it on a nearby table before quietly leaving. After Lucas left, the penthouse returned to its familiar silence, but this time it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was an empty, tense, and heavy one. Malene felt a disquieting sensation rise within her, as if something important had just been taken away. She told herself it was just disappointment, that she had done the right thing. She went back to her office, trying to focus on the financial charts on her screen, but the numbers danced meaninglessly. Suddenly, a strange sound reached her ears, a tiny, almost inaudible sound coming from the living room. Cars. Malene froze. She strained to listen. Maybe she had misheard. Unclay, Lou.ks. This time it was clearer. It was a voice, a whispered, hesitant voice, but a real one, a voice she hadn't heard in years. Maline's heart seemed to stop. She rose silently, tiptoeing out of her office toward the sound. She held her breath as she neared the living room doorway, peeking inside. The sight before her left her breathless. Eva was no longer in the corner. She was standing in the middle of the room, right where Lucas had been sitting. One arm was clutching the flower mosaic he had left behind, while the other held a single blue petal that must have fallen off, and she was whispering, repeating it like a mantra, her face turned toward the door where Lucas had just departed. Uncle, Lucas, Uncle, Lucas. In that instant, Maline Ward's entire world collapsed. The wall of pride and logic she had built around herself shattered into a million pieces. Lucas's patience hadn't been for nothing. His silence hadn't been a failure. Every day, as he sat there gluing down each petal, he wasn't just making a picture, he was building a bridge. A silent, safe, and trusting bridge to lead Eva out of her muted world. And she, in her impatience, in her arrogance, as someone who only trusted in immediate results, had just torn that bridge down with her own hands. She had almost lost the only person who could reach her daughter's soul. Without a moment's hesitation, Maline turned and ran. She didn't care about her designer heels clattering on the floor, or about the polished image of a CEO. She burst out of the penthouse, frantically jabbing the elevator button. Every second of waiting felt like an eternity. When the doors opened on the ground floor, she bolted out, heading straight for the gardens behind the mansion. Her heart was pounding, not from exertion, but from fear. Fear that he was already gone. Fear that it was too late. She found him there, by a rosebush. He was doing nothing, just standing still, pruning shears still in his hand, his gaze lost on the horizon. He looked like a soldier, returning from a battle he knew he couldn't win. Lucas! Maline's voice rang out, urgent and breathless. He turned slowly, showing no surprise at seeing her. It was as if he had known she would come. Maline stood before him, trying to catch her breath. The apology she had prepared in her head vanished. Instead, words from the very bottom of her heart tumbled out, unpolished but utterly sincere. I was wrong, she said, her voice cracking. I was so impatient. I didn't understand. She took a deep breath, looking directly into Lucas's eyes. The cold calculation was gone, replaced by a profound regret and a desperate plea. She said your name, Eva. She said your name. A warm glint flickered in Lucas's calm eyes. I thought that healing was something measurable, something with immediate results, Maline continued, her voice trembling. But I get it now. I understand what you were trying to do. You were right. Healing isn't a destination, it's a journey. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to almost a beg. Please, come back. Don't let my foolishness make you abandon her. Eva needs you. I need your help. It was the first time in her life Maline Ward had ever admitted she needed anyone's help. It was the hardest confession she had ever made, and also her greatest liberation. Lucas looked at Maline for a long moment. He wasn't seeing the powerful woman, the CEO of a major corporation. He was seeing a desperate mother, one who had finally shed her armor of pride to seek help for her child. He said nothing, simply placed the pruning shears gently on the edge of a nearby planter. Then, he gave a slight nod. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. I never really left, Mrs. Ward. Relief washed over Maline. She felt as if an invisible weight had been lifted from her shoulders. All she could manage to whisper were two words. Thank you. Together, they walked back to the penthouse. This time, there was no tension, no imposition. They walked side by side, a silent understanding now formed between two people from entirely different worlds. When the elevator doors opened, the scene in the living room made them both pause. Eva was no longer standing and clutching the mosaic. She was sitting properly on the floor, right where Lucas always Saturday. The flower artwork was spread out before her, but what was different was what she held in her hand. Not a petal, but a blue crayon. When she saw Lucas and Malene enter, she looked up. Her eyes, for the first time, met theirs directly. They were no longer empty, no longer fearful. They were clear, with a hint of expectation. Eva slowly stood up, still holding the crayon. She offered it to Lucas, and then a miracle happened. A clear voice, though still a bit hesitant, rang out in the quiet room. "Dinner again, please." It wasn't a perfect sentence. The grammar might have been off, but its meaning couldn't have been clearer. "Stay for dinner, please." An invitation, an acceptance, a plea to never leave again. Malene brought a hand to her mouth, silent tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. This wasn't just a sentence. It was an entire world opening up. Lucas smiled, a genuinely warm smile. He walked over, knelt down to Eva's level, and gently took the crayon from her hand. "Of course, Eva," he said, his voice soft. "I'll stay." Eva's progress, instead of bringing peace, ignited a battle. A thick, cream-colored envelope from the New York Supreme Court lay on the kitchen table, a warning from Spencer Ward, Malene's ex-husband. He was filing for full custody. "He's saying I'm unstable," Malene told Lucas, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear, "that I'm exposing her to an unqualified individual. He means you." Lucas's reply was calm and resolute. "Then we'll fight for her." The courtroom was cold and tense. Spencer Ward sat with his high-priced legal team, radiating the confidence of a man who had already won. His lawyer launched a direct assault, accusing Malene of ignoring professional medical advice in favor of crayon therapy from an unqualified gardener. When it was his turn, Lucas took the witness stand. He spoke simply. "I had a daughter like Eva, and she's gone because of my mistakes. I am here because she taught me something the experts seem to forget, that sometimes the best treatment you can offer is simply to be there." The courtroom was silent. Then the judge nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Hale. Eva doesn't need more walls, no matter how expensive they are. I didn't treat her. I listened. I met her silence with my own quiet presence, and she trusted me." He turned to look directly at Spencer. "You think that suit makes you trustworthy, but Eva doesn't care about titles. She cares about who can step into her world without making it shatter." After Lucas finished his testimony and returned to his seat, a heavy silence settled over the courtroom. The judge was lost in thought. Suddenly, there was a soft noise from the back of the room. All heads turned. Eva, who had been sitting in silence throughout the entire proceeding, slowly stood up. She was clutching a sketchbook to her chest. Malene held her breath, her heart frozen in place. Without a word, Eva began to walk. She walked past her mother, past the lawyers, and straight toward the judge's bench. A complete and utter silence fell over the room. The judge signaled for the bailiff to stand down. She leaned forward, her voice gentle. "Hello, Eva. Is there something you'd like to show the court?" Eva said nothing. She simply opened her sketchbook and held it up. On the page was a simple but incredibly clear drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands under a starry sky. A tall man, a woman, and a little girl in the middle. All 3 of them were colored in with a single color, blue. The judge looked at the drawing for a long moment. "And who is this, Eva?" "This is Eva's family," she said. "This is me. This is my mommy and Uncle Lucas. Uncle Lucas says, we're all blue. That means safe." Malene couldn't hold it in any longer. She wept silently. It was the most vivid evidence, a more powerful testimony than any words could ever be. Spencer Ward was stunned. The smug look wiped clean from his face. The judge leaned back, silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. "Effective immediately, Eva will remain in the custody of her mother, Malene Ward. Any further actions will require extensive psychological evaluation and family therapy, in which Mr. Hale is welcome to participate with full transparency. Gasps, camera flashes, then silence. As the chaos subsided, Eva turned to Meline and whispered, "A promise, a declaration. We're blue, Mommy." Meline nodded, tears still streaming but a smile now on her face. "Always, my love, always blue." 6 months later, on a crisp spring morning, the air no longer held the cold, metallic scent of an office or the antiseptic smell of a hospital. It carried the fragrance of damp earth, young grass, and wild flowers stretching in the Sunday. On a rolling hill overlooking a lush green valley, Meline and Lucas stood side by side. Gone was the distance between the CEO and the gardener. They were simply two friends, two partners, looking together in the same direction. Meline wasn't in a power suit. She wore a light sweater and jeans. Her high heels had been replaced by a pair of walking boots. She looked casual and at peace. Between them, a large blueprint was spread out on a makeshift wooden table. "The Lily's Garden Center for Discovery and Healing." Meline read aloud the words printed formally at the top of the design. Her voice held a deep reverence for the name, the one Lucas had chosen, in memory, in atonement, and in hope. Lucas smiled, a smile no longer tinged with sorrow. "A place where children don't come to be fixed, they come to be heard. A place that isn't a hospital, but a home. No walls, only worn paths leading to the fields." Meline looked at the design, which featured sensory gardens, a small stream, charming wooden cabins, and an area for animals. "I've spent my life building empires of concrete and steel," she said, her voice thoughtful. "Perhaps this is the first time I'm building something that can actually grow and bloom." A peal of clear laughter rang out from the foot of the hill, interrupting their thoughts. Eva was there, dressed in a vibrant yellow dress. She was chasing a flutter of white butterflies. She was no longer the little girl huddled in a dark corner, no longer the child lost in her own world. She was a part of this garden, alive and free. Seeing her mother and Uncle Lucas watching her, Eva beamed and ran toward them. She said nothing, simply held out a small, cupped hand, offering a wild daisy she had just picked. Lucas knelt, gently taking the flower. Meline bent down too, stroking her daughter's golden hair. For the first time in so many years, they were a real family, not defined by words, but by a simple gesture and an unbreakable bond. The three of them stood there together, on the hill of the future. Behind them, the ghosts of the past were laid to rest. Before them, a plot of land was waiting to be sown. A garden born from pain, cultivated by patience, and promising to bloom with hope for countless other young souls.